In the Santa Cruz Mountains, a coastal area perpetuates a redwood rainforest that hosts the tallest trees in the world. The mighty Sequoia sempervirens can reach almost 400 feet in height and live to 2,000 years. If they could speak, they would tell you a solemn story of the destruction of the people and fish that existed in harmony with them for thousands of years. Before the Spanish arrived in 1769, the Awasawas peacefully lived in this region. The Awasawas fished for then staggeringly abundant coho, salmon, and steelhead with baskets in the San Lorenzo River. Every winter, these anadromous fish make their way from the Pacific Ocean to the river mouth, which is currently next to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. They then travel upstream the San Lorenzo River into the redwoods to spawn. In the late spring months, the smolt make their journey to the ocean for the first time and will turn to the same river to spawn, such as millions of generations before them. Every year, for thousands of years, the Awasawas feed their people to the rhythm of this cycle, which has lasted peacefully until Spanish and American colonialism led to the genocide of the native people and disregard for the natural environment. The San Lorenzo once boasted an annual run of at least 30,000 salmon and steelhead, but today only 1,000 steelhead run and less than 50 coho are estimated to run. In the San Lorenzo alone, the steelhead are considered threatened and the coho salmon are listed as critically endangered. This is the story of nearly every river in California that hosts migratory fish. UC Davis and the nonprofit organization California Trout predicted that 74% of California's native salmon, steelhead, and trout species are likely to be extinct in 100 years, and 45% could be extinct in 50 years, in a research-based report. Climate change, fires, drought, poor water management, non-native species, hatcheries, poor biodiversity, agriculture, habitat degradation, and dams all contribute to our salmonid species' horrifying decline. A specific industry that is especially threatening salmon and steelhead is the cannabis industry. Unlike the cultivation of agricultural crops, Northern California marijuana is traditionally grown in salmon and steelhead watersheds. The Emerald Triangle contains many of California's most important migratory fish rivers, such as the Trinity River, Salmon Creek, Redwood Creek, and the Eel River. The region is uniquely desirable for marijuana growth and produces some of the best cannabis in the world. The marine layer provides a dense hydrating fog and typically sees more rainfall than a lot of the state. The soil is nutrient dense and cannabis connoisseurs praise these outdoor grows. Historically, the remote redwood forests provide refuge from law enforcement. Though marijuana farms in Northern California began with environmentally friendly hippies in the 60s, many growers in recent years show little regard for the environment. With over 20,000 cannabis growers today in the Emerald Triangle, sadly the operation taxes local resources. Each plant requires up to 6 gallons of water per day. An individual farm can grow hundreds, even thousands of plants, who often turn to streams to accommodate this need. In a single watershed, there can be 30,000 plants consuming vast amounts of water per day. Salmon and steelhead often lay their eggs in sensitive tributaries which are safer for their young than larger parts of the river. Siphoning such tremendous amounts of water can dry up smaller creeks and tributaries. But streams don't have to be dry to see effects in fish populations. The extreme water usage can lower water levels to a dangerous level. Salmon and steelhead are very fragile and need cold, clean water to survive. In the hot summer months, which already experience seasonal low flows, the even lower water can get too hot, thus oxygen deficient and suffocate fish. Growers often divert streams, which not only consumes water but can completely alter its structure and geography. Furthermore, the construction of small dams can prevent fish from reaching their spawning grounds or block smolt, which are juvenile salmon or steelhead, from exiting the river to the ocean. Secondly, runoff from growers endangers the well-being of migratory fish and other species. Pesticides toxic to the fish in high enough concentration can severely deform embryos and even kill fish. 70% of illegal grows utilize carbofuran, which is illegal in the US due to its high toxicity. Despite the fact that a quarter teaspoon of carbofuran can kill a 600-pound African lion and a single grain kills birds, Mexican cartels still smuggle it in. This dangerous chemical, as well as other over-the-counter agricultural pesticides, easily find their way into waterways. Additionally, fertilizers can cause mass die-offs through the process of eutrophication. Once in the water, fertilizers often trigger major algal blooms. Soon the algae die, and the bacteria that consume them um, consume vast amounts of oxygen, suffocating fish. Another impact of the marijuana industry is habitat degradation, mostly through sedimentation. In addition to cold, clean water, salmon and steelhead require a natural pebble river bottom to build their redds. Pebbles are crucial because they hold eggs from being washed away by the current and allow some water through to provide oxygen. Grow sites usually involve some level of manipulation of the landscape and are often built close to their water source. Consequently, activities such as road building and foliage clearing send dirt into these streams. This layer of sediment can bury eggs and prevent juvenile fish from finding food. Finally, illegal growers leave behind considerable amounts of waste on public and private lands. Makeshift canopies, buckets of pesticides, raw sewage, irrigation pipes, and piles of trash are abandoned on grow sites. This pollution can pose both immediate and long-term damage to wildlife and water quality. The issues that I've outlined are mostly associated with illegal cannabis grows. The legalization of marijuana in 2016 has enormously helped to implement environmental regulations. There are plenty of law-abiding cannabis growers who pose no threat to local wildlife and instead generate a lot of tax revenue to help bust these illegal growers. That being said, if one is buying cannabis, always do it from a legal, reputable brand and from a dispensary. This assures both your well-being and the well-being of local wildlife. I've highlighted a lot of factors of legal marijuana cultivation that are threatening salmon and steelhead populations, but why care about a fish? Besides the intrinsic values of California's native species and our duty to protect them, salmon and steelhead are keystone species of their environments. Um, in their respective food chains, they provide food to mammals such as bears, otters, whales, dolphins, and humans. Migratory fish also bring upon vital nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen to the ocean, from the ocean to less fertile rivers on their spawning journeys. A study in southeastern Alaska found that tree growth rates are nearly 3 times higher in areas with spawning salmon compared to areas without salmon runs. Finally, the link between native peoples of the Pacific coast and anadromous fish is a sacred bond that's lasted thousands of years. Indigenous peoples sustain some of the highest populations in the continent with salmon runs alone. Americans have already slaughtered their native people, stole their lands, and stamped out their culture. The least we can do is preserve their sacred relationship with salmon and their steelhead that their ancestors depended on, so that future generations can experience this culturally significant symbiosis with their homeland. Thank you.